Hello, and thank you in advance for joining MASSP and the Michigan Department of Education for a joint conference on the Michigan Merit Curriculum Flexibility. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bob Kefchin, and I am MASSP's Director of Government Relations. Recently, there's been a lot of conversation in Lansing about the Michigan Merit Curriculum. In preparation for the upcoming conference, we wanted to put this issue in context for attendees, review the history of how we got to where we are today, and build a common base of information to facilitate a productive conversation. To begin, it's important to start back at the inception of the MMC. In 2006, before the state passed the initial Michigan Merit Curriculum law, Michigan only had two legislated graduation requirements, a semester course in civics and a physical education course for those students who were physically fit and able to participate. Districts had locally determined graduation requirements that went beyond these minimums, but there was wide variation between districts. As happens with so many laws, the pendulum swung, and Michigan ended up at an opposite extreme on this issue. The initial MMC law passed during the Granholm administration came in the wake of the Cherry Commission report, with a focus on increasing college attainment, and also included not just graduation requirements, but things like making the ACT part of the state assessment. As for graduation requirements, the original MMC law required 18 credits, including math through Algebra 2, science through chemistry or physics, and 2 years of world language, although implementation of the world language requirement was initially delayed. We have seen a raft of legislation to change the MMC every year since its initial inception, and the tide seems to be rising over time, not only in terms of bills introduced, but bills that get hearings and are eventually passed into law. Some have proposed adding requirements, some have proposed removing requirements, and still others have proposed swapping courses or making more wholesale change, which means that in addition to a law that swung the pendulum from one extreme to another, we've seen constant churn in this policy area. While the initial MMC law focused heavily on course titles and credit requirements, it also required MDE to develop common high school content expectations. Since 2006, those expectations have also evolved into our current state content standards, and as they have changed, so too has our understanding and interpretation of the MMC law. We see this reflected in the guidance and information published by MDE, which has moved from a focus on course titles to a conversation about standards by discipline. Indeed, the current MMC Frequently Asked Questions document put out by MDE in September 2017 provides one of the most striking examples of this. To quote the math portion of the document itself as an example, quote, "There are no required courses. Students must earn 3 credits in math aligned with subject area content expectations," end quote. If this shift in focus is news to you, you're not alone. The existing flexibility in the law is not well understood among educators, let alone legislators. And it is into this space that the MMC Flexibility Conference falls. To quote State Superintendent Dr. Michael Rice, "We are at a generational moment in the history of the MMC, and a generational issue deserves a generational process to produce a generational product." 13 years on, Michigan students and schools need a holistic approach, rather than the continued policy churn and endless litany of bills. That's why this conference has 2 focuses. We hope attendees will have the chance to develop a deeper understanding of what the MMC is today and what flexibility they can currently exercise for students. And we want to start that holistic conversation about what the MMC can become by bringing all stakeholders to the table, but most especially educators. As we begin this conversation, it's important to look at outcomes and examine what assumptions are shaping our opinions about the MMC. So let's start by reviewing some statewide data on educational outcomes since 2006 and look at what employment projections tell us moving forward. As we do this, please consider what influences are shaping your opinions and whether these data reflect or conflict with your experience locally. Since the MMC law went into effect in 2006, the state's graduation rate has risen roughly 6%, and over that same period of time, the dropout rate is down about 6%. CTE enrollment has been effectively flat as a percentage of the student population since the MMC became law in 2006. And while CTE enrollment is down statewide since then, so is our overall student population. Today we have roughly 200,000 fewer students in Michigan and 75,000 fewer high school students than we did when the MMC passed. Moreover, despite losing 30,000 pupils over the last 4 years, overall CTE enrollment has grown by 6,000 students. In other words, statewide enrollment data do not seem to support a claim that enrollment in CTE programs is declining under the MMC. Depending on what CTE programs you have locally, though, the picture may be different. Construction and business management programs have seen significant declines in enrollment, while programs in healthcare, IT, and especially STEM have grown significantly. In addition to overall CTE enrollment, it's also important to look at the number of CTE completers, that is, students who have finished a full CTE course sequence. On that score, the most recent data released by MDE in December show, among other things, that the number of CTE completers in the state has increased by 75% over the past 4 years. It's important to remember that all of these data, from graduation rate to CTE completers, are correlative, not causative, so we should be careful about drawing too fine of conclusions from them. Still, the figures are compelling. And as we look toward the future, these numbers may matter even more. Of the state's Hot 50 jobs, meaning those projected to be in the highest demand between now and 2026, only 4 do not require some post-secondary education. In fact, by 2020, just next year, 65% of all jobs in the U.S. and 70% of projected job openings in Michigan will require some level of post-secondary education. Right now, only 44% of working-age adults in Michigan hold a post-secondary credential. That means that our recent increase in CTE completers is a good start, but we need many more students to pursue post-secondary credentials at all levels. And that means students need to do more than graduate from high school. They need to be prepared for their next educational step. In preparation for the conference, please take some time to consider these data, how they relate to your local reality, and to complete the brief survey that was emailed to you with the link to this video. We're looking to collect some basic data about your school demographics, your schedule structure, and the current state in your building or district. Conference attendees who also complete the included worksheet will be best prepared to engage in the afternoon discussion led by State Superintendent Dr. Michael Rice and facilitated by MASSP about what the MMC could become. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you on Thursday, January 16th here in Lansing.